Well, good afternoon. This is Bilbo, your DM from World of Hearthron, and I want to go ahead. I just want to make sure Twitch was working, and it is. So that's a good sign here. So what I want to talk about here is Volo's Guide to Monsters. And I'm not going to do a book review like many others have done. What I'm going to do is really talk to, and you have in my notes here off to the side too, just so I make sure that I capture everything I want to talk about. But I want to talk about as a DM, a new DM or an experienced DM, what can you do using the Volo's Guide? Should you go out and purchase this book? So first off, I'd like to mention, like I said, I'm not really going to go into depth about the book. There's plenty of videos out there that do a great job of doing that. Um, some of my players, they asked me, what book should they get? They have Player's Handbook. Some have asked, well, should I get the Monster Manual? Should I get DM's Guide? And I'm like, well, I prefer you not getting a Monster Manual because I don't like my players knowing the monsters, even though I switch them up all the time anyways, what they can do and can't do. And then DMG, I said, is kind of a waste of time unless you're going to DM. For me, it's a good resource book, but I've been doing this for 40 years. There isn't much in the sense of a DMG that I'm going to take away from it, other than how some, the magic items work and fifth edition and so on. But a lot of the, some of the rules and the stuff on how to create adventures and such. Great resource for new DMs. For me, it's old hat. I've read of course through the DMG guide. I've read the player's handbook several times now, and uh, and then of course gone through Monster Manual and so on. So I just want to talk about Volo's Guide. One of my players got me this book for an early Christmas present, and of course he got me the nice, cool edition that's out there that only game stores had to offer. Needless to say, so I recommend this to my players. And the reason why, one, there's 7 new playable races. I'm not going to go into those. And then, of course, the monster lore, just not as a DM to have, but even players to kind of just know the personality of monsters, how that can affect your role playing as well as your DM's role playing. I thought it was good. If you study creatures, you should have some knowledge. Now, hopefully, your players can keep player knowledge versus character knowledge separate. If that's the case, if you have a certain character that won't know anything about a beholder, even though the player might, it should be what the character knows, not necessarily the player. I also like the monster edition in here. I like that they brought back quite a few fiend folio creatures that I love. Once again, I'm not really going to go into that. You can go into your game store or Barnes and Noble and take a look really before you really want to purchase this. In fact, I didn't even see this. Now I take this back. Volo's, I didn't even see it at Barnes and Noble. But go to your local game store and you can probably find one of these copies, not probably this one, not these nice covers, because they were limited edition, but at least the other one. So also the back section of the book is great for NPC stat blocks. It's back there. Break down CRs for the beasts. With that being said, running an epic level campaign and above, you're not going to find much here, as well as any other Wizard of the Coast products. I've heard that as a big complaint from some other DMs out there, that once you get characters to 15th level, it's hard to go beyond that to challenge your players, especially for a new DM. experienced DMs, and I don't like running characters past 15th level. In fact, the group that you see on my other screen here that we'll be playing Saturday, the Grey Guardians, they are in the midst of, I'd say, anywhere from 8th to 11th level, I think now, or maybe 7th to 11th level. And usually this is about as high as I go um, for characters, because it becomes really life or death after this. Situations where characters can just be gone. And when my players kind of want to push it a little bit more, we may get up to 15th level. We'll see. But after that, it's what are you going to do? Fight a god? Fight, go down to the abyss and fight demons and devils. And doing that, there's no coming back. And these players have built a lot of memories into these characters. Um, and so, you lose it, you lose your character. And when you're in those situations, there ain't no coming back usually. You're dead. And, so we'll see what happens with the group. I kind of have them built out to a certain level. But usually, for me, I kind of run lower level campaigns. I usually, let characters get up to around 8th level, and then I start a new campaign. A lot of times it's just storylines. It's nothing against the characters or the players. It's just, in a sense, of the DM, your creative flow needs to go in certain ways. Needless to say, let's get back to here about creativity flow. So, let's talk about the section you use as a DM. I first have to say this might be one of my favorite books ever by Wizards of the Coast and even old TSR. Like I said, I've told my players to go out and buy this book. And, we'll kind of go into there. So let's just using my notes. So let's go into the book here. So we have in here, and it's the first part of the book of our creatures. So the first thing here is the monster lore that we have in here in the book. I'll kind of turn it around this way. I'm not going to be reading it. So hopefully that gives you a good view. One, I love the artwork, of course. They've been doing a really good job of having artwork in these books. So this is the first thing. So beholders, you have giants, you have gnolls, goblinoids, hags, kobolds, mind flayers, orcs, and the Yuan-ti, all discussed in the lore. Each of these creatures are broke down kind of in the same way. With the actual build that you can build a campaign around, or a short adventure, a one-shot. So I want to give you some ideas as a DM. What can you do with these creatures? What can you do with the lore? And so we'll start with the beholder. And there it is, the big bad beholder. Good old picture of him. Nasty things. So let me first start out by saying this. I've DM'd, played D&D for 40 years. And I think, just by going by memory, I have probably only faced a beholder twice, and probably only DM'd as a villain twice. So out of, 4 decades of playing, I've only, had these encountered 4 times in my game, because they're just so nasty. I know they've toned them down a little bit in 5th edition, which is probably a good thing. And so maybe I'll revert and have a storyline with the beholder as some boss sometime in my world. But they're a nasty creature. And so let me give you an idea here. So with the beholder, what you can use. I mean, so you have, a breakdown of their personalities. You can build them just purely rolling if you want, or just go in there and look at the stuff here and create. It goes into their lair, their treasure. Love the layer part. That's a map that you could use or use just as as inspiration to build your own map. Which that's kind of what I usually do, or I might steal a map from something else. With that, so you can build a whole campaign around a beholder. That's the one thing. My best friend and co-DM did this in a campaign of his, and he actually used a couple of groups, different characters in different groups, but under the same campaign, the same island in my world, Luma. And behind this whole thing, there was a beholder mastermind actually, working with a couple different groups. He's a great storyteller, and he could wrote this book honestly. Um, the way it's laid out and the way he DMs, he could actually wrote Volo's guide. It's right on to kind of how he ran this campaign. So and this campaign, and like I said, you can steal this idea. I'm not giving away any names or anything like that of of our characters or NPCs. But so we started this campaign, and we were dealing with some lizard folk that were cutting off a trade route between a village and a city here on this small island. Later, we learned that some Yanti were behind the lizard men. So once again, here we have in this book the Gianti, which you can use, as well. You can use all this almost in the sense of a, campaign, and I'll kind of go through this. Next, the group faced off some orcs that were coming down from the mountains to invade and destroy this village that we were, living in, our homeland. And we were tasked to fend off part of this orc army. And so once again, orcs are in here, you know. So you had, this orc chieftain coming down. We had to deal with this Yanti and their group. There's also a cult behind within the Yanti, and there is even a cult with the Beholder. Um, so these two fractions didn't even know they were working with this Beholder. The Beholder had basically control of this Shanti leader and control of this orc leader. Um, and this beholder is behind the scenes in this mountain, pulling all the levers. And of course, we didn't know there was a beholder involved until much later in the story. Um, and now, when we do discover there's a beholder in this mountain, this layer in this mountain, our characters weren't tough enough to take on a beholder at the time. We knew it existed. We needed to figure out how can we deal with it, and we actually hired mercenaries. Happened to be other characters of ours that were higher level in other campaigns, and we basically played a marathon session of 3-day weekend just full of D&D, going through this beholder layer, was filled with traps and the beholder minions and so on, and we're able to defeat this beholder in the end. Um, but this here is a perfect example how you can use multiple creatures from this book on creating a great campaign and remember it for years. I mean, we still talk about this campaign to this day, and that's what you want. You want, 10 years ago is when we ran this campaign, maybe 10 years plus, to be honest, and we still talk about it to this day as one of the good epic campaigns that you'll have, and each of these creatures are set up the same way. So one thing I would say here is, so the giants are next. And I don't know if it's because of Storm's King Thunder coming out with this. I'm a little disappointed with the Giants lore. I thought they could do more. However, I just got Storm King's Thunder yesterday for my anniversary from my wife, and I love that book. I've only read through the beginning part of the whole what's happened with the whole Order of the Giants and the betrayal and all the scheming that the Giants are doing. It's wonderful. So I'm hoping that book goes more and more detail about the Giants. And the other thing that was missing is dragons. Why don't we have dragons in Volo's Guide? However, once again, they have Rise to Tiamat. And so maybe it goes into more detail there. I just got those books for Christmas. So I got a lot of stuff for Christmas, D&D wise. I feel like a kid again. I haven't asked for D&D stuff from my wife and my kids. My kids are all older now. And that was on my wish list. And my one of my kids gave me a hard time and was kidding with me. What are all these Alex? Is this Alex's wish list? And I laughed, but I definitely feel like a kid again, asking for D&D stuff for Christmas. And normally I just end up buying it myself, and my players do a great job in the past with 3.5. The old rule was if I don't own it, you can't play it, and so I should one day maybe show this whole background of library of D&D stuff, all the 3.5 books, second edition, first edition. I have it all, fourth edition. So that's all there. So let's continue though to talk about. So the Giants, I kind of wish they did more. I've been doing stuff with some Giants too. In my campaign, they've had to deal with Great Guardians here in the background. They've dealt with some Fire Giants in the past. They actually just defeated some Fire Giants that were actually trying to leave this this continent. And they ended up, the party ended up dealing with them, killing them outright. Um, Hill Giants, of course, nasty, nasty Hill Giants. I use them a lot as brute force in my games. Usually they're charmed by somebody or, being manipulated by somebody. I've never had like a boss Hill Giant, but with Storm King's Thunder, what I read, I kind of like that, and maybe I'll do something like that, steal from there, and do something there. But like I said, the Giants, I kind of wish they did a little bit more. I mean, there's a lot of detail in them, but they didn't kind of really go into their layers and stuff like that. The other thing is, I kind of wish this, and I haven't searched through Storm King's Thunder yet, but I wish there was a little bit more detailed, stat blocks on some tougher, a variety of different giants. They did that with like the gnolls here that brought the Flynns back. They have some different gnolls, kobolds, orcs in here, which is great. I kind of get that fourth edition feel where they had some different type of level minions and stuff of the orcs. I did like that about fourth edition. That's the one book that I even have off to the side here with my other monster books that I keep as a reference to kind of use, maybe steal some abilities from an orc or whatever they're dealing with. Maybe I'll look in there and say, what do they have here? And maybe I can add that as a special ability or power into there. So, the next thing here, the next section here is the gnolls. And I love this section. I love gnolls. They're nasty. They're hard to deal with because they're bloodlust. They did a great job in going in detail in Yeenagu, the demon gnoll lord. A wonderful job on the gnolls. And here, once again, great ideas on building it. They're very bloodthirsty. This group, the Grey Guardians, when they were young, actually dealt with some gnolls and bad situation. Some characters died and brought back, but Um, Gnolls are nasty, and there's really kind of no negotiating with them. And I really like what they've done with the Gnolls. You can build a fortress. And this is the great thing with, in the sense, the gnolls, the goblinoids, the orcs, the hobgoblins, the bugbears. With that, you can have a place like, I have this hill where the group is, where um, different, these humanoid groups are even going to war and fraction for this one hill. They just all feel like it's superior, and now I have it actually held by some hobgoblins, and they, just like this in the book, have built a little fortress. Not as good as this one. I like the picture, but the one thing is about the book too is you can go through here and just get inspiration on, some ideas of what you want to do, to build. So here, here we got this castle, and it probably wasn't originally, owned by hobgoblins or ruled by hobgoblins, but it is now. And I've done the same thing, except this hill was vacant, and there's been bugbears up there, there's been gnolls up there, and now there's hobgoblins occupying, and the hobgoblins, though, have basically been fortifying it, building buildings, building archer towers, really trying to keep this hill as their own. The group, when they were lower levels, and I think had lower ambitions, wanted to take this hill and then build a tower for themselves. And so it could be interesting too. It could come back where that can happen. The characters are higher levels, but have, younger, lower level characters that might have to deal with these fractions that may want to come back and take this hill. So those are even give you great ideas to use later on when your characters do get epic level. You make your epic level characters NPCs really in the game, and you bring in new PCs to kind of do their bidding. So that's with the hobgoblins. There's a goblin war camp here. I've done the war camp with orcs. Um, and as I said, they really break down things. The hags. I don't even think I mentioned the hags. Hags are in here. They do a wonderful job of going through hags. Some great stories you can do. I've done a one shot where three hag sisters stole something very valuable from somebody in town. They're posing, um, disguise themselves in the sense they look very beautiful, slept with the one guy, stole something very valuable to him, and in turn, sorry, I'll take this. Hello? Okay, be up in a minute. Bye. So in turn, he hired the party to go and recover this item. Great one-shot adventure. You can do a Hags. You can build a whole campaign around. They just started the new series Emerald City. That can give you a great idea for Hags right there. The witches there. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but the first episode I seen was really good. Um, the orcs, kobolds. Kobolds, I don't really do anything with kobolds. My players know I don't. I have a love-hate relationship. I love to hate them. When I was a younger player, about 12, 13, one of my players and DMs, we co-DM back and forth. He'd DM one weekend, I'd DM the next. And as an 8th level character of mine, 8th level fighter, was returning home, he ambushed with me 20 kobolds. They kicked my butt. I almost died. And since then, I've hated kobolds. But maybe here I'll do something with a kobold layer. My players know it. The DMs that in my group, they always seem to put kobolds against me. The mind flayers, once again, a great idea. to use in the Underdark. They do a really good job here going through mind flayers. And then, and there's a layer here. And then the orcs too. So orcs, you know, there's a stronghold of the orcs. Orcs are almost a fallback for me. I use them a lot in my game. Right now, my current campaign is dealing with an orc warlord named Grimnox. And this group started months ago with the groups dealing with some small skirmish of orcs. Then they finally dealt with an orc blockade. And an ogre chieftain was leading that. So I built there, built fractions, the leadership level in that. And that's what they're dealing with here. And in the background here, they're going to meet a cloud giant and figure out how they can deal with Grimnox. And so, these are some just great ideas. Uh, if you have any questions or want, to ask me questions about how do I build a campaign around this or a one shot or a couple adventures, please feel like, subscribe to my video, put a comment on it, and I will get back to you or do another video on this. Like I said, I plan to do a lot more videos in 2017, kind of going through books like Volo's and other books. I'm going to do a video here on, as a new Dungeon Master, Game Master, things that I wish I knew when I started to maybe help people out. So I'm going to go ahead and sign out because the wife is on her way home. And remember, it's cool to be a geek. Pass it on. World of Hearthron, DM Tips with Bilbo. Have a great afternoon. I'm going to go watch some football now.